Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, evening, wherever you're tuning in from. So glad that you are here with us. This is Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast. And I am your co host, Dayal, and I'm here with Achyuta Gopi and Kishore Chandra. We have the live conversation tuning in from you live from New York. We have a live virtual studio audience here on our Bhakti Center Rise platform. If you would like to jump onto our live platform, please come and to bhakticenter.org and check it out. Also, make sure you go to bhakticenter.org and check out all of our other amazing programming, including our upcoming Mexico Kirtan training, April 2nd through April 9th. Kishore Chandra are taking a small group of people, just a few select individuals to keep it small, intimate learning. Well, we'll be having a full immersive week on the Pacific side of the Mexico coast in a private retreat center that we will have away from the hustle and bustle of life to just immerse ourselves in sacred sound. Whether you are fully new, have never played kirtan before, have never touched a harmonium, you are welcome and it's perfect for you. Or if you are somebody building upon a kirtan practice that you already have, there'll be modules for everybody and we'll do lots of kirtan together. Please reach out, send us an email, or you can reach out to me, only because my email is a little shorter to remember, Dayal at bhakticenter.org, Dayal. Or you can just go to our website, bhakticenter.org, and there's a big banner right there. Click it, and you can email Kishore. Or write to us and send us a DM on Instagram. However you want to reach out. Pigeons. We take pigeons. I got pigeons. Pigeons, snail mail, however you communicate, reach out to us. And we'd love to have you with us. That being said, my morning pitch is done. And let's get into the conversations. We were chatting before we launched live, and we kind of were getting into it. And our studio audience was like, "Wait, I thought we were already live. We were talking about stuff." We realized our Ayurvedic constitutions. Kishore is Kapha, which is mainly earth and water, and Achyuta's Pitta, which is airy,
I'm
air,
Vata.
and I'm no, she's Vata, which is airy, air, and I'm Pitta, which is fire. So our new podcast name is Earth, Wind, and Fire. And silence.
It's
Wah,
making that
wah,
way. Okay, it
wah.
worked.
All right, guys, how you doing?
I'm good. We're good.
Good, good.
Great. I'm ready to talk about the psychological nature versus nurture where we left
Yeah,
off.
yeah. Well, because we were talking about dreams before we launched, and Kishore's like, I don't remember my dreams. And we're like, I remember all my dreams, and it's so amazing and vivid and cool. And Kishore's just standing quietly in the corner, like, can we start the podcast, please? And talk about something that I can participate in. And so we're like, okay, we're launching. But where we left off yesterday, we were talking about because we're talking a little bit about like identity yesterday, and where when keeping it real goes wrong. That was the title we stole from Dave Chappelle, and we when to be our real authentic self, or when being our real authentic self is too much for our surroundings. And Arushi, who was in our live audience yesterday, wrote this kind of comment about sometimes we need to the p words like pretend or perform are usually like a negative connotation, but we have to sometimes know the environment that we're in order to understand like what if we understand that we ourselves are multifaceted human beings, dynamic personalities, that we're not just this cookie cutter, this is who I am and this is who I show up in every single situation, but actually like there's a grayness to it. And there's also like there's different parts of myself that show up in different scenarios. And that if I it's like it's I remember I was mentioning this idea of expressing ourselves or proving ourselves. Like if I feel like I have to be a certain way, then I'm almost kind of it's somewhat inauthentic. But if I don't, like I don't have to show up with every single part of myself in every situation. And so it's just kind of like navigating this, especially I think it relates to our spiritual life in the sense of um, you know, like I could tell a story. You want me to start with a story? I'm starting. Do you guys want to say any, do you guys want to say anything?
I
Otherwise,
have
it'll be like 9:28, and I'll be like, "That's all the time we have today. What wrap ups do we have, Kimberly?" You're like, "The hell, you spent the whole time talking."
I have something very esoteric to share, so maybe we can start something a little lighter. with your story, and then I'll share
Okay.
the
Well, I don't know
esoteric
how light my
one.
story is, but I've shared many times. There was a period of my life in my spiritual life where I was, I lived as a monk for 10 years of my life, and it was a very, I liked it, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, and I incorporate that into a big part of my identity. And during that period of time in my life, it was a very sequestered life. Like, kind of who I am in New York is very different than who I was in California. Like, when I was in California, especially when I was living as a brahmachari, I was very quiet. I was very reserved. I didn't have a computer. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a car. Left the temple I would go and like once a week walk down to the public library to check my Hotmail account and see the two emails that maybe I had there. And so and I didn't really know much of a world outside of like my 1 mile geographical area and just the community that we were serving and et cetera. And so and I was also very like I could be a timid person and was also like in this brahmachari monk mode of just like I live to serve and I do what I'm told and I'm humble and in the background and just like taking it all on. And I did that when I was 18. When I moved 18, and then when I was 23, I moved to New York. Spent another 5 years here as a monk, and then in my late 20s, I moved out of the ashram, the monastery, and I got married. When I was 29 or something. And then it was during that time when I really started to like have this mirror and look at more parts of myself that I hadn't, like my material parts of myself that I hadn't really come up against, like interacting with like, and again, it was that scenario of like, it was very easy for me. My identity in some ways was very linear. Like I'm the monk in the temple and I do what I'm told. And I didn't really have a lot of friendships and interacting with the world of like family and work and different social circles. I didn't have social circles. I came to kirtan at the Sunday feast and like that was my interaction with the world. And so I started to realize a lot of my own personal like childhood issues and parental issues were coming up and like realizing like my father was an alcoholic and how that affects my ability to show up in relationships and love other people. I used to say like if you want to love everyone, being like a monk or a brahmachari is a great way to do it. If you want to learn to love someone, then like being in a married or committed relationship is like because it's not like, oh, this relationship's getting hard. I'm going to go spend 6 months in India and then see what I want to do with my life from there. And so I'm moving to a different temple or whatever it may be, which is what I did halfway through my brahmacharya life. I picked up and I moved to New York. And so, I started to kind of get into like personal issues and I found these 12-step programs, ACOA and Al-Anon, which are for programs who people who don't necessarily have their own substance or addiction issues, although they may, but who really struggle because people in their life have had addiction issues or alcohol specifically, and how we deal with that. Alcoholic partners, alcoholic kids, alcoholic parents. And so I would go to these meetings and and I was a full-fledged devotee practicing, working at the Bhakti Center in my whole life. And I would show up to these meetings, and they were this huge sanctuary for me. They were this huge sanctuary. I got so much, but I would show up and I was like, I don't want to share so much of my spiritual journey because part of me was like embarrassed of like, I'm supposed to be like, I lived as a monk for 10 years and I'm this work at a spiritual community center and I teach yoga and meditation and do all these things and my life's a mess. And I'm like, I'm struggling with like my inner child work and like, these are my traumas and like, I have insomnia and like all these things. And people are like, is what you're doing working? You know what I mean? Like, aren't you supposed to be the one that has the answers? And so it's like there was this dichotomy of like I leave that life aside and I would show up and I was like I was David. I was like, "Hi, my name is David and I'm an adult child," And I was like I didn't want to share that. And I always struggled like how do I bring these worlds together? And at the same time I realized there was a part of me that really worked in some ways. Like it wasn't like I was intentionally hiding something, but there was also this sense of like there's also part of me, this is an area of my identity that I need to explore without necessarily bringing something else in. And so as I grow and develop, I'm learning how to integrate the different worlds of myself, but also I realize that it's not a bad thing necessarily if we show up in a certain area of our life to work on a certain area of our life or to express an area of our life, and it doesn't the worlds don't always need to collide, so to speak. And I'm not sharing like an answer or like a realization necessarily. I'm just expressing. I don't think it's an answer that we arrive at. I think it's a scenario that we constantly um, engage with. And I'm just sharing my own. There was an episode of there was an episode of Seinfeld where George, who was engaged at one point, and his, there's the tight, there's George, there's Elaine, there's Kramer, and there's Jerry, and then George was engaged to this woman, Susan, and then Susan started to become really good friends with Elaine, and they were becoming friends. And he would meet with Susan. Oh, Elaine told me this, or Susan told me this, and he was like, "Wait a second." And he had this conversation with Jerry, like, "This is terrible." He's like, "The worlds are colliding. When this world collides with this world, the whole system blows up." And he was talking about like the worlds colliding sometimes. And so I don't think it's duplicitous of necessarily to like recognize that there are different parts of ourself that function in different orbits. Anyways, there's no answer there, but I was just kind of expressing my own journey in that, and something I still go through of like, where does my spiritual identity integrate with who I am publicly, and vice versa, and family, and those kind of things. And so that's kind of where we left off yesterday.
I remember when I met you, Dayal, you were still kind of a little, I wouldn't say timid, but not how you are now.
And how
And
would you describe how I am now?
well, I feel like you're very much like comfortable being in the seat of a leader, a speaker, a facilitator, a teacher. Whereas when I met you, I think you were like right on the cusp. And it's been really amazing to see that transformation. And I went to those Al-Anon meetings with you. Dayal actually brought me to some of them because I needed to go. And it was very good. It was very good. I think I think what you just said is really powerful, that it's not duplicitous for us to not have all of our worlds colliding at once. Like, we don't have to be our most 1000% authentic, living every identity, having every mask on by mask, I mean like the masks that we use in
Stop
the
wearing your
roles.
mask. That was
No,
another
not
episode.
that. I feel like
That
I
was a
have to
previous
clarify
episode.
now in the times that we live in. The roles that we wear in society, not wearing those all the time. And it's really interesting because I think that this whole question slash statement of like, who am I, or like, this is who I am, I feel like it's such a broad, I don't know, it kind of like does us disservice after a while, because it's like what Achyuta was saying yesterday, which I really loved. It's like wait, who was saying that? I can't remember. It's something about the gray area, living in the gray area. Was that Africa Brooke?
Africa
That
Brooke.
quote? Okay, that was Africa Brooke. But like, yeah, like the majority of our lives is lived from that space, and that's actually like, the more that we can recognize that, the more true that the more it becomes like, there's a certain power that we achieve once we realize that. And I think that it's not what the esoteric thing I wanted to share, which I won't get so into because I feel like it's a bit of a non sequitur, but not really,
You just caught Achuta's attention.
is that this is not an idea that's anything new under the sun. Like, these ideas of the roles that we play, and acting and pretending, fake it till you make it, and all of this stuff, this is nothing new under the sun. This exists for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And a fun fact that I always thought was really, really cool was that in ancient Greece, the plays and the theater in ancient Greece provided a very specific role to society. And so when we think of the word catharsis, right, like what we think catharsis means, like, I just worked out and I feel so good and I just let out all my frustration and anger, and now it was a cathartic experience. But the actual original meaning of the term catharsis was in this very public sector of theater and society. Like, the people who were at the top of society, they noticed, or they I can't think of the word, they realized that there was a certain ailment in society. Like, this is not good, this societal issue is really bad, and it's starting to spread. Like, it's starting to spread among our population. So we need to have a full-blown theater production about this, and everyone in society needs to come see this theater production. So if we think of like Oedipus, Oedipus Rex, like I'm not going to go into the details because it's kind of intense, but if you want to know, go look into it. But they're like these really intense things that like all of society would see and they'd be like, oh, that is not what we should do. Like that is really okay, we're getting it. We are understanding from the actors on the stage that this is something that's in our heart or in our society that needs to be like actually purged. It actually needs to be like removed. And I think that this idea of, and I'm not saying that that's how it should be now, but it's interesting to understand that like this has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. And last esoteric thing I'll mention, I was reading this book recommended by our friend Jai Jagannath about the Bhakti tradition, and it's like a very esoteric book, and it's called "Acting as a Way of Salvation." And it was fascinating because it was basically getting into the idea that when Rupa Goswami was really codifying bhakti, and when he was really like getting into like how do I put this science into writing, he was like a genius. You know, he was a genius, and he was looking at all of these like um theories that exist in Vedic thought. And he was specifically using this one called Rasa Theory. That's an artistic and aesthetic like understanding of seeing the world. And and so he built that into his like understanding of bhakti and how we kind of are assuming our true identity as spiritualists by acting or entering the real role of who we actually are and exiting the fake role in our staged world. And like William Shakespeare, he says, what's the famous thing that he says? All the world's a stage and all the men and all the women are merely players. And so this idea of like the roles and like what is this and all this stuff, like this has been going on forever actually. And I think it really behooves us to understand this contemporary, very like American individualist, very Western of like, this is who I am, and like American dream and like individualism. Like it's a social movement in a sense. Like it's not me who came up with this idea. It's actually an ideology that has been placed onto me, and I live in this contemporary like context, and therefore I think it's right, if that makes sense. If I was born 1,000 years ago, I would not think in this way. I would not be like, it's me and I, selfie and like it's all about me and my success and this and etc. It wasn't like that. So the reason I wanted to say that is because I thought what you shared, Doyal, is like super powerful. It's like, because the question that I asked yesterday is like, right, when does keeping it real go wrong? And I think the answer was so succinctly put just now. It's like it's actually not wrong or not duplicitous to exhibit different sides of ourselves depending on the situation that we're in. It's actually like
Mm.
that's actually tact. That's actually social tact and understanding my own boundaries and how I enter into the role and play or pretend or like whatever word you want to use. Pretend has a negative connotation. So how I enter into that role and actually do it. But I saw Chuta doing a lot of this, and it seemed like she knew about the Greek theata, which I assumed that she would. So I'm excited to hear from Chuta.
Chita was a Greek goddess in her past life.
Yeah, 100%.
I
100%.
actually had a dream that I was. It was really weird. I
Choka.
swear I had a dream that it was so strange. But I also like I had like a couple of majors in college, and one of them was in humanities and in like so yeah, I was total like Greek nerd. So when you were saying it, I was like, yes, you're right. And like one of the things about catharsis was going to this public thing, like a spectacle, right? Because that's right, going to this spectacle, being and then being moved to produce these emotions and actually go through with producing these emotions. I feel like now we get to a point where you get to the point of emotion and then we're like, whoa, we got to stop that. Like the strongest way to be part of society is to show no emotion unless it's like the approved ones. And I feel like even in ancient Indian art, you have these navarasas, you have all of these rasas and these relationships and these feelings, and you've got dance forms which are specifically tailored towards showing all of these range of emotions that people are supposed to have and are supposed to embody. Um, and what I really love is when you even think about Krishna. Krishna doesn't just play one. He's not one staple character where you just kind of like you could plug in anybody and it could, Krishna's gonna do the thing. No, he's gonna act differently with all kinds of different people. And if we see ourselves and if we see our souls as part and parcel of that supreme person, having those same attributes in minute quality, then we have to understand that you're not just gonna be one stock image that somebody found on Google and that is who you are at all times and in all circumstances. We are subject to change, which is one of the things about ourselves, our constitutional position. We're going to change. Normally, we think of that as, well, we're going to grow old and die. But no, we're also internally, our emotions are going to change and shift and do all those things. And what I found really fascinating about your story, adult, is kind of what I found in real life. It's like what happens when you move out of a so-called spiritual circle and then you start to feel this enthusiasm, encouragement, this enlightenment almost outside of your so-called spiritual sector. And when we were talking about like New Yorkers are kind but not nice, I feel like sometimes as spiritualists we are transcendental but not good. Like we think of this platform of goodness where people are really conscious and really living with intention. And then we're like, oh yeah, well, but it's still in the modes. So we're going to transcend that. And we wind up transcending to a platform of trying to be devotees, but we're not good. Like what happens when you're transcendental, but you're just not a good person?
Hmm.
Like I feel like sometimes we start missing some levels. And while Krishna makes it easy to level jump, we have to remember to give the proper respect to all of those modes of material nature and realize that they actually do have a part to play in everything that we're doing. And like you said, it doesn't have to be duplicitous. It doesn't have to be, it's like, oh, well, you were caught up in the modes of passion. Completely wrong. It's like, well, in order to create anything you have to get in there in that mode of passion. So in order to be a creative, in order to have a child, in order to do any of those things, you have to associate with those modes of material nature. Does that then mean that, like, oh my gosh, what kind of spiritualist are you? It's like, or do we look at Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma and people who qualify these different moods and understand that when they say Krishna takes a form in one of these, and you're like, how does that look? Because it's like, what does that actually mean? It's like Krishna manifests his form as Lord Brahma in order to create, or Lord Shiva in order to destroy, or whatever, interact with material nature. It's like, what does that mean? It means that the man takes on different roles for different things. And so Krishna, being transcendental, he's like, well, I don't really interact with those things, but at some point I'm going to have to, in order for anything to be created, in order to have these relationships between all of these different modes. He even takes on different qualities. So it made me remember all of the good times when I was with like really conscious people. And I had those like epiphanies of like, dang, as devotees, we need to get it together because
Hmm.
I mean, at least the least we could do is be more conscious and intentional, even if it's about playing a specific role. And Rupa Goswami went on, what the biggest bhakti contribution he did was to make plays, which I love. Like he's like, I'm
Hmm.
going to take all of these hard to grasp theories and concepts, I'm going to put them in a play. Somehow or other, it's all gonna, like, Krishna will make it all work out, and he did, and he wrote play after play, and we derived such great like spiritual joy, emotional joy, um, and it's because, like you said, it doesn't have to be duplicitous. If we are if we are really tapping in with conscious intention and really understanding that this has a purpose. Now at a certain point I will have fulfilled that purpose. Like at a certain point you realize, well, I fulfilled the purpose of being a brahmachari. Like that wasn't always something, it's like you're a brahmachari, now you do that for life, for forever. Like it was a point in time. So all of these roles that we have, all of these things that we do, sometimes it's okay to realize, that's fulfilled its purpose. And I can actually, like, when when you get on a phone call with somebody, you don't actually expect it to last forever. You're like, I fulfilled the purpose of this call. I can hang up now. And so, it's this constant balancing act between when to let cycles naturally end and step into a new role, a new position, a new way of being, and when it's okay to say authentically, like, okay, I did that when I was 5. Now I'm able to step into something else, and it's okay to let that part go. It's okay to let that rest. Doesn't mean that I've forgotten everything. I'm still taking some things with me, but this idea, even in yoga, between when to hold on and when to release and let go, allow your muscles to do what they need to do.
Hmm.
I was
I
gonna
was
say, I was gonna say that I think it's just so powerful. Everything that you just said, Achyuta, is so powerful. And I think like in the context of what Doyal shared, it's even more powerful because I think that there's two aspects to this. One is I can understand this, right? Like I can understand what you just said, Achyuta. And therefore, like, okay, I might need some help or some guidance in going through the shifts. So I'm going to go to Al Anon, or I'm going to go to this 12-step meeting, or I'm going to go to a therapist, or I'm going to talk to a confidant, right? And great. And the other side of it, though, and maybe we can get into this more tomorrow, is, and we've talked about this at length, but I feel like we haven't, I don't know, it's a touchy subject, how others see us and how others judge us, because what I heard from Doyal is like, I'm supposed to be the spiritualist and I'm supposed to be this and I'm supposed to have all the answers and I feel like we've all felt that at some point. I'm supposed to be this like leader, I'm supposed to be this, I'm supposed to be this that, but I have all this stuff going on that I feel like I actually can't talk about. I have to go off where no one knows my name. They know my dead name. They know my dead name. I was like,
when,
okay.
when no one knows my name. My name is Achyut. My name is Achinta Devamadava Das. I'm an adult child. What? What did you just say? Are you in the right program?
Oh.
I looked up this quote that I found recently. It said, before you call yourself a Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu, or any other theology, learn to be a human first. And I thought that sparked my memory from what you were sharing, Achyuta, is that sometimes we get so caught up in our identities, we lose the ability to be human, which is, there are many multifaceted aspects to that. And I think the overarching question of this podcast and our discussions in general, as well as what we're discussing today, is yes, okay, I understand the rules, I understand the principles, I understand all these things. But what does it mean for me to be human and have my human experience as I walk through and navigate all of this? And I think that, um, when someone's going through an issue or someone's sharing what they do, it's almost kind of like doctors go, hold on, let me look back to the textbook. How am I supposed to respond to this? And what should you do in this situation? And it's like, am I allowed to do this or can we do this? And it's like, what? Wait a second. Like, have I learned to just be human and recognize that we're on this human journey? And faith that we have the sincerity to move through it, and that our sincerity is our continuous course correcting factor. Um, and the compassion we extend to each other are the lifelines that we give, and the grace that we receive is the promise that we have, that we, the reassurance of our friends and community and supreme best friend. And so, thank you guys for allowing me to be human, for being human. Thank you guys all for listening. Kimberly, what's our takeaways here today? And thank you for being human.
Thank you for being human.
I try.
It's okay to step into different roles. Even Krishna, who's transcendental, takes on different qualities. The parts of ourselves function in different orbits depending on the situation.
Beautiful. Thank you so, so much. Very grateful to everyone for being here. Really, really glad for our live audience that's with us, for all the listeners out there, for Achyuta and Kishore. Pasha said, did you get my owl? I don't know what that means. Oh, her
Because
owl, meaning she sent me a message
she
via
sent you a
owl.
message. Owl mail.
Owl mail. Owl mail. I'll have to look. There was this weird scratching outside my window. I didn't know what it was. You didn't tell me ahead of time. I was like, why is this owl here? You're like, from pasture, from pasture, from pasture. I was like, what are you saying?
Don't let Jiva near the owl.
Oh my God, he barked. He's a barky boy. Okay, guys, love you so much. Please take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.